Hello there, Comme de Marigny from X&Immersion. Just a quick message to warn you that we had a little issue at the beginning of the recording of the webinar. So I'm doing just this quick message to explain to you what happened at the beginning. So we are doing a webinar on how to create a voiceover pipeline for AA studios who have a AAA ambition. And our guest for this webinar is Felix Tiévant, who's been the sound designer for a long time and has worked on very prestigious licenses, such as Assassin's Creed, The Witcher, Gwent, and Prince of Persia. We very briefly went over his experiences and what we do at X&Immersion, which is creating generative AI toolings for video game studios. But I will let Felix explain his experiences as a sound designer and about how he created the pipeline using our tools and how that changed his experiences as a sound designer. Have a nice time.
So we populate this middleware with all of our assets, and then we use that to trigger sound in-game, on a game engine, whether it's Unity, Unreal, or an in-house solution. For example, like Snowdrop or Anvil at Ubisoft, Frostbite at EA, Red Engine at CD Projekt Red, etc., etc. So it's a whole chain of things from the very beginning, which is creating the asset, either collecting it or creating it in a DAW, like digital audio workstation, like Reaper, for example, in which you can use sounds that are either pre-recorded or you record your own sources, you tweak them, layer them on top of each other, and try to create a sound from that. Put that in the middleware, and then trigger that in game and see how it works in your game based on distance, real-time parameters, like if your game has slow motion, things like that. So it's a whole chain of things from the very creative to the very technical. And as I said at the very beginning, you have multiple categories. The three big categories are usually sound effects, music, and voice. We're going to talk specifically, but more specifically about voices here. Voices for video games is a complicated topic. And I'm going to be super blunt. It's also a money sink. It's probably when we talk about sound for video games, it's probably the biggest money sink, the more cost heavy at least. If there are people that are interested in that topic, the excellent Tim Kaine, which is the creator of the Fallout brand, has a blog on YouTube. And recently released a video that's called Reasons Why I Hate VO or something like that. It's been released last week or 2 weeks ago. And he talks about all of these points, but I'm going to sum it up quite quickly. When you record voices for video games, you need to know what you need to record. So the line needs to be written. You need to have a casting. You need to have the voice actor that's available. You need to have a place where you can record the line. Once it's recorded, you need to have a sound engineer that's going to clean the takes and then select the take that's the best. And then you collect that and you put that in the game, and hopefully it works. But most of the time, well, not most of the time, but sometimes the line has been rewritten, or the line doesn't, how to say that? The voice delivery doesn't necessarily fit what you needed because you didn't have anyone on site while doing the recording to direct the session. And it's super expensive because all of these elements that I've talked about, they cost manpower, which means money. And you need to multiply this complexity by the amount of course, by the amount of lines you want to have in your game. So Tim Kaine talks, he's only been doing RPG, so usually games with tons of lines, meaning possibly tons of voiceover if you need to voice that. You also need to consider that if you're doing localization, you're going to record like what we call localization, which is translating your
Yeah.
game into a different language. You're going to need to multiply that complexity level and these costs by the amount of languages you're going to localize to. So for example, if I'm making my game in English and I want to do it in French and Italian and Arabic and Persian, you're going to have all of this cost multiplied by the amount
Yeah.
of lines, and you're going to need to find outsourcers and voice actors. Different. So it's super complicated. Doesn't mean you shouldn't do it, because it's incredibly cool and it's adding tons of value to the game, but it's logistically extremely complex. And because it's complex, and because it's cost heavy, you need to make sure from a production point of view that you're not wasting money. So I'm going to go back to it, but I'd say you're making a video game and you have roughly an idea of the amount of words that you have. You divide that by, let's say, 10, and you have the amount of voice lines you're going to have. And then you're going to need, okay, how many male voices do we have? How many female voices do we have? Okay, we have X amount of male characters, X amount of female characters. Do we need one actor per character? Maybe some actors can do, multiple voices. So you need to figure that out. Then you need to find place to record, and then work with. Say, for example, we're recording the voices for our games for our game in London or in Los Angeles. You're going to have to find a casting that can go to the recording location.
Yeah.
So you're going to be limited by the pool of actors in the region, which is, limitative. You are going to need to see if the actors are available, when you record, because sometimes, they have commitment, whether it's in theater, movie, like recording a TV series.
And because it can span over a long time.
Absolutely. There's like, I saw on Cyberpunk 2077, the expansion, I saw that one of the actors died during the production of the DLC.
Oh, wow.
So we can talk about that later. But these stuff happen because, of course, it expands. Like the production for a video game can span from can last for 5, 6, 7, 8 years long. So yes.
So you've had instances where you worked on a game and
not personally, but
so like, what was, in your experience, the longest you've had between the first recording session that you did to the last one?
I think 2 years, which on Prince of Persia, which was the latest one, we tried to keep it short, and it was still 2 years. I think we postponed purposely the first recording with a limited amount of script, just so that we could control the cost. And it was only conducted in English at that period.
Right.
But yeah, it's complex. You need to log the script. So by that, we need to make sure that the script is logged. So the lines is not, because once you record the line, if you decide to change the line, you need to bring the actor back, and you need to pay all of the things I mentioned before. So it's and those things happen all of the time. Once it's recorded, either you use it or you waste it.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
And also sometimes you have a line prepared, but the actors will tell you, all right, that doesn't quite fit when you tell it, so I have to change.
But that's part
words.
of the game, you can adjust it.
But then you have to go back and change the script to attend to that.
But it's easier to do it like this.
Yeah, obviously.
It's easier to do it like this because it's better to adjust the script to a line that's being recorded than change the line altogether.
Come a little bit further. Yeah, perfect. All right. So
yes.
And obviously all of what you just described, you multiply that by the number of languages.
Absolutely. So when we talk about like the cost of on the latest budget for a game that I've worked on, the amount of cost dedicated to voiceover compared to sound design and music was like 2/3 of the budget for dedicated to audio, which is a lot. So I forgot what was your initial question, but the topic of this talk is how to have to have a game that has a AAA feel with a AA budget. And by AA budget, I mean the way I classify games like AA, AAA is mostly like budget considerations.
I don't know how you do the differences, but I usually look at a double A game being between 5 and I don't know 100 million of budget.
100 is a lot.
Well, maybe 50, like between 5 and 50 millions.
I would have said like 5 and 15.
Oh, all right, all right. Like I would have called everything above 50 a AAA. Or maybe a quadruple A because it seems to be a tendency. That's a market issue.
Yes.
But yeah, so you consider it over 15 million.
Yeah. Yes.
Right. Okay.
But even on bigger games, I think on bigger budget, I think it's good practice not to waste money and to think about costs from the get-go.
Obviously,
yes.
So in that case, in that range of business, because you've worked on AAA and AA budget, so what are the big differences between a AAA budget and a AA budget?
Well, it all boils down to money, which is the amount of, and when we talk about voices, it's the amount of retakes we can afford. On AA, you cannot afford any.
Oh, really?
I mean, very little, and it needs to be justified. On AAA, you have a little bit more leeway, but it's always, it's not only about, I was about to say, it's not only about money, because you need to, like, as I said, you need to make sure that you have the actor at hand. You need to make sure that the studio is available. It's money. It boils down to money, but you have usually a little bit of leeway to do that.
And also languages, I guess.
Yes.
Like a AA will have 1, 2, maybe 3 languages.
Yes.
But a AAA can have
much. So, for example, for Prince of Persia, it was my wish from the very beginning that we had the Persian version, so Farsi version, just because it was a language that you never hear pretty much anywhere, and I thought it was a good opportunity to have our players be exposed to how it sounds like, because I had seen a movie in Persian and I thought it was it's completely foreign, and would be good to like represent that language.
And I think that actually had very good feedback from the audience. That doing that extra step, which is very expensive.
Absolutely, you on typically a AA game could not afford that. Oh, you would have to swap the English version for another version, which means that you would probably, like, your player base might be lower, which is a shame, because that if your game is in English, it's going to have a broader audience. So it all boils down to money, and sometimes in AA, it's you don't have the luxury of choice.
And so talking about that, since it boils down to money, maybe not the best transition, but we've had the opportunity to collaborate with you on using generative AI technology, especially for voice synthesis. So can you tell us a little bit how those kind of tools were added to your pipeline? Absolutely. And what did it change?
Yeah, so we've worked together on the project that may or may not be released, at least in the form we worked on. We worked when we worked together. I'm working. Let me collect my thoughts.
What did it add to how your workflow changed?
So the game was the prototype is a computer RPG, which means tons of speech, because that's what we like in this type of game. We know that when you have talking characters, when you read the line that's been on text, when you read the text and when you hear the line, the feeling can be different. So when you have a dialogue between two characters, the timing, the tempo of the dialogue can be wrong if you base it only on text, and sometimes it's better to have that, you know, being said to you, say, it doesn't feel quite right, or the interaction between those two people is right. You cannot do that on text, or at least it's very tricky. We could do it if we take the script, you and me, and we read the line to each other, but that's going to require
time and
both of our time, and once again on a smaller size teams, you stuff that you might not like. Time is not the luxury you have. So and at the same time, you cannot really. So you could record, if you have a microphone, you could record lines yourself as placeholders, but they might not be good quality, and they might not give you the feeling that you want to have, because if the delivery is bad, because you're recording with really people that are really not comfortable in front of a microphone, it might not work either. And if you want to record with actors, you might not have the budget. Once again. So we worked together on this game, and what you gave us was TT. So what we call TTS, text to speech. We've had you generating not massive, but at least a decent amount of voice assets based on our script, like that. Because what we did was basically we started with something that was a bit clunky in the beginning, was to export the script that was in the game engine, which was Unreal Engine, to export that to an Excel spreadsheet with the CSV format. And then in the early stages, it was using a macro on the Excel to generate the voice lines, but then it evolved into something that can batch generate a whole script. So now if I go on the X&I website and I upload a CSV with my script, I press the button. On my spreadsheet, I have the script, I have the name of the VO file name, and I have the actor who's going to say the line. I have done before that an assignation between a mapping between, okay, this character is going to use this voice type, and so this one is going to be a male with a grumpy voice, and this character is going to be female with a high-pitched voice, etc., etc. So you do that before, and then you press generate, and then it's going to create 1,000 lines with the proper naming that you have, with the proper script, with the proper voices, so proper placeholder voices, and then you can then batch import that in the audio middleware and have that being played in your game with a turnover, I don't know, I'd say 2-3 hours of turnover based on how big is your session. But so it's super handy. It allows me as a game creator to have a much bigger velocity when it comes to putting content in game. One thing I didn't talk about, but having we talked about technical considerations, but it's also good to start populating your game really early on in the process of making the game, for just to hear how to mix my game, how the voice is going to be heard in comparison to music, in comparison to sound effects. So that's from a creative point of view, from the mixing point of view, but also from a more technical point of view. If I have, let's say, 10,000 voice lines and I want to release on Switch, how big is going to be the space? How much cartridges space will be dedicated to voiceover assets? If I don't have content in the game, I can guess that it's going to be, I guess more or less. If I start populating my game with placeholder assets that will be swapped later on, I have a much more accurate assessment of this. It's also, how much do we need to put in RAM at runtime, etc., etc. So all of those things you cannot do if you don't start populating your game with assets. And either you have either you do it the hard way, which is recording actors, whether it's real actors, but mostly if it's early on, your script is not locked and it's going to cost you. You're not going to be able to have those assets being heard in the game. So you're going to throw away money, or you're going to record it yourself. It's going to be super time consuming.
Right. So that's very interesting. So actually, using populating the different assets helps with prototyping, with imagining how big the game is going to be regarding some of the constraints, which actually I never thought about, which is like the size of a cartridge of a Switch game. I don't know how big it is, but
that depends. That depends, but you can have bigger cartridges, and it's going to
and
cost
it
you
will
more.
increase the cost.
Absolutely.
So okay. So if you mismatch the creation, you're going to have issues down the line, or you're going to ask your players to do day one updates.
Yes.
Which is annoying for everyone involved. All right, so that's very interesting.
Yeah. And also from like a pure production point of view, it's also good to have your teammates hearing stuff in the game and not it's good practice to involve because usually in audio, when you're working audio, game devs, they don't necessarily have headphones on, they don't necessarily pay attention to what's happening in the game. So it's also good to raise awareness about what's happening in the game and populating your game with sounds. I know that the script writers or the quest designers are going to have to play their quests because that's what they're working on, and they will need to have voices in the game, whether it's real voices or during the production phase placeholder lines. Just so that we're just a second, just so we're completely clear, I use the word placeholder a lot. Placeholder means it's stuff that we like, assets that we so in this instance voices that we use in production but that are not meant to be released during the whole, like when the game ships. We'll go back to that later.
It's basically like holding the spot, holding the seat
exactly
for a real asset. And actually, so now I'm having plenty of questions popping up. When you have placeholders in your production, does it change the way you're going to prepare all the recording session with actors? Does it push it back further into the production, or do you still have that process come throughout the production process?
That really depends. I would always recommend to have the recordings happening at the latest, not too late, but at the latest, just so that writers can iterate on the script. This being said, you need to start planning super early, just to the casting, the booking of the outsourcer, etc. But if you have internal milestones, either internal milestones or with a publisher, for example, someone who's going to finance your project, you will need to have good quality stuff. So you might have in between your production recordings with a limited amount of script and a limited amount of voice actors. So in the best case scenario, what you record is not changing afterwards, but the way, video games are always evolving. And even now when they're being released, they keep on evolving and keep on changing. So there's no guarantee that when you do this like this midway milestone or halfway milestone in between your production, there's no guarantee that it's not going to change. And, yet again, you're going to have to throw away whatever has changed. And it means money not wasted if you manage to convince a publisher that but in the long run it's not a good practice. So it's always better to have recordings happening when things are stable-ish.
Obviously, because as you said earlier, when you do that, you're avoiding reshoots, so you're saving money, and you're also not recording stuff that will be thrown away. And that's the very big advantage of using text-to-speech. Is that it's very inexpensive. It's just a few cents in the worst case scenario for every line. So it's really barely wasted money at this point. Coffee is more expensive.
And I'm going to jump to another thing that we wanted to do on this this RPG project, which was lip syncing.
Absolutely.
Lip syncing, meaning the fact that when my character is speaking, the mouth is moving according to whatever is being said. there's multiple ways to do that. The cheapest is just to have what we call leap flap, which is I detect that there is a voiceover line that's being played. Therefore, I play a loop animation of my character mouth doing stuff like that, Or you can do real lip syncing, which is you detect what's being said, you break it into chunks to detect phonemes, and then you play the according animation at runtime. You cannot do that if you don't have a voiceover line to start with.
Obviously.
So we wanted to have that in our game at some point, but we're like, okay, but we need to have voiceover. So, we go back to, do we record placeholder? Do we have real actors going to, or do we, we needed to have something like 300, maybe 400 lines, which would take, I don't know, 1 or 2 days of recording, just to make a quick prototype, and it would be completely overkill to record real actors for that. And we could do it with you guys in, I don't know, half a day. It was done. So yeah,
without planning.
Without planning, yes.
Which is the longest.
So
and that was in the context of creating a vertical slice.
Yes, absolutely. So once again, we're not talking about the final product. We're talking about prototyping, and that's really, 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 really important distinction. Yes.
So that's the feedback that we've had from several people, is whenever studios are creating a vertical slice and working on having the highest quality vertical slice to show it to editors and publishers.
You get real voice actors.
Yeah, if you have the budget to do it with voice actors, it's going to be a lot easier to convince someone, because the product you're showing is so much higher quality. And if the only alternative to that is to have nothing, then because it's always a comparison, you're always competing with other projects, studios, to get that financing. So yeah, the feedback that we've had is having the ability to do high quality text to speech that is obviously not always meant to be a final product, but very close to that.
Yes.
That raises the quality of a vertical slice. And is it starting to raise?
Yes.
Oh wow. So yeah, that raises the quality of the vertical slice, and then raises you in the comparison of other studios that don't do it.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, the better is always going to be a real actor with a real delivery, with a real intention. And a few years, even 2 years ago, like TTS was not an option because the quality was not good enough. And we saw in the last 2 years, I think, companies like X&Immersion, but also Researcher, 11 Labs, something like that.
There are plenty of
like, for example, when I talked about Cyberpunk earlier on, I think they work with Researcher to make a voice model of the deceased actor and then regenerate new lines for that character based on the AI model.
So that brings us into a topic that we need to talk about, which is ethics.
Yes.
So in that case, it's so in the situation of that actor dying, you have basically two options. Either you throw away everything and you recast someone, which is very expensive, but obviously you don't have choice. Or you do that, you clone his voice, but then you need to have the agreement of his family.
Yes, so
which is very complicated.
And kudos to all my former CDPR colleagues. That's what they did. At least that's what I read they did. They had the agreement from the family, which was super cool. And it's also a way to have the
kind of an homage.
Yeah, absolutely. So, but yes, like we did the experiment with you guys. You recorded me for like 15 minutes of me recording voices, and you can synthesize my voice at leisure. So
he agreed to it.
I agreed to it. I agreed to it. But yes, that's pretty creepy. When you think about like voice actors, it's a real job. It's not only and it's not only voice actors, it's also sound engineers, recording locations. That's really expertise there. And we need to think about how, the goal for me, the goal for AI is not to replace voice actors. And I think you shouldn't aim to do that, because nothing is ever going to replace, a sentient, a human being, having a real sensibility and giving a real delivery. So when I use my use of TTS lines is only for placeholder purpose, for me to be more efficient in my day-to-day work. But the highest quality is always going to be a real voice actor. This being said, and for me as a sound designer, as a sound professional, there's two things I need. Well, no, as a professional, I need to have one thing. I need to have good quality if I want to release a game with a line. 2 years ago, it was not feasible at all. Now, we still have a bit, difficulty with intention. Like a robot is not going to be a real human being. This being said, when we see the progress that has been done in recent years in terms of voice synthesis, I'm kind of afraid, not afraid, but
it's going fast.
It's going fast, and it will improve, and we will get there. But there's a second thing I need, and that's more from a citizen or politics point of view, or as a citizen, you need to make sure that the text-to-speech industry is fair in regards to the voice actors industry. Because you need to have real voice actors to train your AI models, obviously, and then you need to not rip off all of the filmography of this actor and then synthesize and then generate voice lines behind these actors' back. You need to be fair, and for this, as usual, as it is often the case, the technology moves faster than the policies.
Obviously.
So then the regulations, and for this, I would not want to, because it's not only voice actors. As I said, it's
it's a whole ecosystem.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So people working in that industry, which do a lot of things around video games, but also work a lot on that.
Yeah. So that's why it's super important for me and for you to understand that when I talk about the use of TTS, it's not to replace a real voice actor. It's to make my production pipeline more efficient and faster, but not to. I don't want to replace my voice cast by robots. Just so we're clear.
Well, your job is maybe on the line in a few years, like
possibly.
Hey, ChatGPT, can you voice my game? But yeah, obviously ethics is a very important topic, and our previous webinar was actually on the topics of IP and ethics for this exact topic, which still has to find a model.
Yes.
So today we don't have a legal solution to how are voice actors going to be paid, how do we deal with the rights for the cloning of his or her voice, and how long can we use it? And
the complexity is multiplied by the amount of countries, because each country has a different, can have different regulation. How do you make sure that the law in the United States is the same as the same one in Europe, and is fair to compare to what's happening in China?
Yeah.
And I don't have the answer. What I can do is to regulate my own use of AI, and this, it's only I have to be responsible for that. So,
and so that's a very interesting issue, and that's one of the reasons that we have been working on an ethical chart within X&Immersion, and we're going to publish it soon, regarding exactly what do we recommend studios and voice actors to discuss and agree upon whenever they want a voice to be cloned and to be used in different ways and in different lengths.
Yeah.
Something interesting. So I see the time is one.
Yes, I was,
so, like
I'm talking a lot. Sorry.
No, but it's amazing. Something that we really want. Sorry, something that we see regularly is people interested in using something that is quite recent within AI, is cloning the voice of someone and then having him speak in another language. So in that context, a studio that had the budget to do English and French, for example, for the game, would have the ability to clone the voice of the English actor and to have them talk in Spanish, Italian, Japanese.
And that's
and stuff
incredible.
like that.
That's incredible. I just want the actor to be paid.
Exactly. But then how much do you pay them for that? So it has to be economically viable for the studio to do it, because obviously it's going to increase a little bit their sales in those markets.
It's going to increase the quality because you're going to ensure consistency between each language when it comes to like the voice tone and the delivery of.
Exactly. Exactly. But also the voice actor has to see that as a profit for him and not a violation of his rights.
Absolutely.
And you have to be, since voice is very specific data that can be reused, that can be used to scam people. We've seen that a lot with like Biden and stuff like that. Like for the American elections, you have to make sure that the way the data of that actor is treated is very protected. Yeah, it's very contained. It's protected. It's contained in terms of data protection, but also
in the use cases.
Exactly, in terms of use cases and how the studio and what are the rights of the studio to, like in terms of timing, for how long can they use that and for what types of projects. So you have to protect a lot of things to make sure that this technology is used in an ethical way. So you wanted to talk about, you mentioned a little bit earlier, and we're going to wrap up quickly after that. During the preparation of that webinar, we talked about the use cases with a knight.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so we had, so usually sound designers, when we record voices, usually they're raw, so it's the real actor delivery. And in some cases, say I'm sound designing a monster speaking, I'm going to have to tweak the voice, what we call post-process, because you're going to take the file, the raw asset, the clean line, and you're going to add processing. So I don't know, overdrive, like phasing, whatever, EQing, reverb, whatever. So we post-processing that. We've had on this prototype, we had a character which was a knight in a big, massive armor, and so we generated the lines for that character, but then it was a clean lines, clean TTS lines, and then I post-processed that, and of course the script changed 1 time, 2 times, 3 times. I was like a bit upset to have to redo the post-processing, and that was a bit annoying. And because I worked closely with you guys, I talked with Alex at X&Immersion, and I was like, okay, my first idea was, could you add my post-process chain after you generate the TTS line? He was like, yeah, it's feasible, but we don't have the same plugins. It's going to be complicated, whatever. I was like, oh yeah, maybe there's another way to do it. So what I did was I provided him with the lines that the TTS lines that you had generated, that I had processed. We re-injected that into your system. You regenerated a model of the knight with the big helm and whatever, and then it gave me a model of,
and then all the lines that were generated included that post-process.
Yes.
So it sounded like a knight in an armor.
And I didn't have, more importantly for me, I didn't have to do anything manual past that point, because so it saved me tons of time, which was incredible. So yeah, you've been a really good partner in that aspect. Because
that was also a very interesting experiment from us to look at that and say, well, does it work? I mean, let's try it.
And that's the thing. When we talk to AI, it's so new that there's no rule, so we can try to you figure it out as you go.
Yeah.
And that was really like, is this going to work? Oh fuck, screw it, let's try it. And yeah, it worked. So it was great.
That's awesome.
But I could not have done that with another with a provider that I didn't have this proximity with. It would have been more complicated.
Or maybe if you had access to your own ways of training your models and the knowledge to do that.
But when you're at the double studio, you don't have that luxury.
Exactly.
So, yes.
All right. Awesome. Thank you very much, Felix, for all of that. Maybe kind of as a roundup of that webinar, you can give us a kind of a short list of the different advantages that you had when using so text-to-speech, generative AI in general within your process.
Faster iteration time, because generating TTS line is super fast and cheap. So that's going to be point number 2. It's cheaper than doing it with real actors or with human actors. It needs to be contained within, like, it's not YOLO. It needs to be contained within an ethical framework. So I use that only as a placeholder, and I really do not want to ship a game with placeholder lines. That would not be cool. Even though it might be legal, it would be completely unfair. So don't do it. Don't considering doing it. I'm looking at you. And yeah,
or call us. We can discuss that.
So for me, it's saving me tons of logistics. Which is good because when you work in small teams, you cannot have one person dedicated to handle voiceovers. So anything that's going to save me time is going to allow me to go home on time and not do overtime so for example, I'm going to give you a really stupid example. If I provide you with the CSV with the text, and I have the file name in that spreadsheet. The file that you return to me, the WAV file, is already pre-named. So that means I don't have to go to my recording session and cut the line, name it properly with the proper name, no risk of human error. And this is stupid. But that happens because you're going to be tired and you're going to make mistakes. So
and when you have recording sessions that are hours.
Yes.
It's tiring.
And you're going to make mistakes. I know with that there's no risk of human error because it's already done for me. So
that's awesome. That's actually a very
anything that makes my life easier, I take.
All right. If you have any questions, please do ask them in the chat. I will be looking at that. And while people are typing those, let me ask you just one final thing. How much did it have any impact on your creativity? Did it allow you to test stuff and try out more things that you would have done?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Not yet, because I haven't had pretty much all the time that has been saved for me has been re-injected into working on other things. This being said, like this example that we talked about with the night, it can be super cool to continue working on that on that direction. There's also the how to call that in English, the happenstance. The sometimes you have something that is not the result that you expected, but it sounds interesting. You could have, say for example, we're making a game with aliens. We could imagine generating a fake language based on syllables and stuff like that we could tweak and rearrange. All of that stuff is it's stuff to be explored, and it could be done the old school way, but for me, AI, especially in video games, is a mean to go faster. So
So actually, people that registered to that to the webinar asked a few questions, and one of those questions was all the part of mixing and integration of the voiceover within your pipeline. So one of the things you said was the auto naming of the file. So in terms of integration, it was easier for you. But now in terms of mixing, we briefly talked about that earlier. Yeah, does that add a complexity?
Like having placeholder lines, or like it removes the complexity, because so if you have the placeholder line, you can already render that line in the proper, what we call loudness, what people use say volume, but it's loudness. You know what's going to be the loudness range of your voiceover, so you can compress your lines accordingly. So you know that the placeholder line is going to have the same loudness as the real recording, because you decide that early on. So you know that in terms of loudness, the placeholder product and the final result is going to be equal, which means that, you know, we talked about the virtue of me populating my game with placeholder assets. I can from the get-go do my mix. I can make sure that everything is level, and I can make sure, so on a static level, but I can also make sure that things that voices interact well with each other, with music and sound. Say, for example, we have two people talking to each other, and you have a car crash happening in the background, or an explosion, or whatever, or music, you know, that plays in the background. You need to make sure that you need to make a conscious choice about what do I want the player to hear. Therefore, me as a sound designer, I need to decide what are the rules for dynamic mixing, what takes predominance in that type of context. Once again, you don't have voices in your game. You wait until you have voices in the game. If you do it late, you're going to start populating your game with voices late, which means you won't have time to mix your game properly. So the earlier you have assets in your game, the better it is for you, and the less stressful it is at the end of a production.
I think that's kind of the takeaway of all of that discussion is have assets as soon as possible, because it's going to be less work down the line, basically.
Yeah, and replace them as you go, or later on. But the closest you have to the final result, the better it is.
But also don't forget any assets in the final game, because that happens.
You should track what has been replaced and what has not been replaced.
But that's usually funny Easter eggs where you find stuff that has been forgotten within the game.
That's not Easter egg, that's a bug. But
that's not an Easter egg, but like
that's an Easter egg if you're kind. It's a bug if you're a bit picky.
It's not a bug, it's a feature.
Exactly.
All right, awesome. I think
sorry, if the person who asked the question that you asked is in the chat, and the answer was not completely clear, please notify yourself so we can answer.
All right, so
you're closer to the, and I cannot see.
I'm looking at the chat. I'll tell you if there's an answer. All right. There is a very big question. All right. So during the development of a project, if one of the character has a voice with post-process, for example, Venom in Spider-Man, which is heavily post-process voice, you need Venom's voice in several different languages. Do you run all the recorded lines through your post-process, or do you send a reference to the studio in charge of recording so that they can create a post-process similar to yours and send you the voices with the Venom sound? So I think that question is regarding so that thing with the post-process with the night that we talked about.
Yeah, but it's not necessarily, as I understand it, it's not necessarily related to AI. It's like more.
Oh, you think it's you think it's related to general recordings?
Yes, I think so.
Well,
so
go ahead. I'll answer the other case.
I saw both cases in production, either on simple simple post-processing. The localization recording studios were doing the post-processing. The quality is never as good as if you do it yourself, because if you do it yourself, you know exactly what you want. Whereas if you have an outsourcer doing the post-processing, they don't necessarily understand the context in which the line is going to be played. So it's going to yield much better results if you do it yourself. This being said, if you have 10,000 lines for this character in 7 languages,
yeah.
So I know some incredibly talented sound designers who've done that for some of the games that I worked on, but that was a one-person job for the whole duration of the project.
Oh, wow.
Which can be, you might not be able to afford in terms of manpower. So yeah.
Yeah. And also sometimes so the question was also going over different languages.
Yes.
And obviously there are some languages where the voices are completely different, and where maybe the post-process
might need to be adjusted.
Yeah, culturally might be a bit weird or a bit different.
I mean, based on the consonants and the language sound. So we talked about Farsi before. It's a super soft language, which sounds completely different than German, which is more aggressive.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Obviously that has an effect, but then regarding, would that be an issue with doing it with AI?
It would need to be tested.
That I don't think we have tested the 19 different languages.
No.
So
No.
That's a good question.
Yeah.
We can try that. That's one of the funny things with AI is a lot of the times people ask us for stuff and we're like, I don't know.
Maybe not.
Let's try it.
One of the things that this question made me think about something else that we have in sound, which is impulse responses for reverbs, in which you map the acoustics of a room. Then it's giving you a super small asset. Then you can run that into a plugin, which we call a convolution reverb, and that's going to recreate the acoustics of a room. So you map the acoustics. You could maybe imagine mapping the post-processing of a character, and then on another voice, re-inject that processing. It's stuff that needs to be tested. It could be fun.
That's becoming.
Thanks for the idea.
That's becoming very technical for me, but I believed you. All right. Well, I think we've.
There was another question.
No, yeah, it was answering to
right,
that.
Right.
So I think we're arriving at the end of this session. We had about an hour set, and that was so. Tanguy, sorry, Felix. I just got the notification. No, but I got a notification from someone called Tanguy, and the names mix in my brain. Felix, thank you very much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
And taking the time to go through all of that process, all of your explanation and your experiences using, doing sound design and using our tools within the pipeline. We're very happy to have you help us with very insightful experiences, and also doing crazy tests, which was very cool. So thank you very much for being here and for taking time to talk about all of that.
And thanks for everyone for hanging out with us and hearing me ramble.
Yeah, so obviously, so thank you very much everyone for attending. We will be publishing the video of that webinar sometime in the coming days or weeks. Also, for the people who want to reach out, also, actually, I'm a bit stupid because I have something prepared for the end. So yeah, you can totally add us on LinkedIn, and especially Felix, if you want to talk with him. If you want more information regarding what we do at X&Immersion, you can go on our website, you can contact us, and we will be at the Paris Game Week and the Paris Game Biz, which are 2 events happening next week in Paris for video games. So that's awesome. And I don't know which other event we are going to, but we're available. Yeah, all right. Thank you everyone for staying this long. And I'm going to wish you all a good
Weekend.
well,
Not yet.
There's still a day tomorrow. We're not at the 4-week day.
True.
4 days.
Oh
a
yeah,
week
true,
yet.
true. I thought we were Friday.
No,
Sorry, my bad.
But yeah, have a nice day, everyone. Weekend is coming soon, and yeah, goodbye.
Bye.